So when I was in high school, I played on my school's basketball team. My freshman year, I was lucky enough, practiced enough, blessed enough to play on the JV team, which meant me as a freshman, I got to play with some of my friends that were older, who had more freedom and flexibility than I did. And one of my favorite memories about that time period is myself and three of my friends, on game days, we would go to McDonald's after school, like in between school ending and the start of our game, because we're JV, so we don't have the game right after, but it's not like long enough to go home and get something to eat and then come back. So myself, Nathan, Bryson, and Jake, we would drive to McDonald's, and we would get, at the time, we would get a McDouble and a McChicken. This is before my vegan days. But it was great because it was only $2. This is when a true dollar menu was existing, and there was tons of things on there. You would take the McDouble, open it up, put the McChicken in the middle of it, and you had this massive burger that would fill us up like crazy. Super easy, very cheap. We're broke high school students, but we got fed and filled before games. And I have such great memories of this time because it was so simple and such a pivotal time. Like, we would just kind of go screw around at McDonald's, order our food, get ready for the game, get hyped for that. But one of the really unique parts about it is my friend Nathan and I were both Christians. We went to church, different churches, but we knew that we both went to church and would talk about it. My friend Bryce was a Mormon, and Jake was, I don't know if he didn't believe in God at all, or if he was like agnostic, like he didn't think God interacted with us. I don't remember super clearly what he believed, but I do remember that he just didn't believe the same as us. Now, you had 4 different people from 4 different backgrounds, all sharing a common love for basketball and eating. And while not every single conversation that we had together during that time was this super insightful spiritual conversation, there were moments in our time of hanging out and just being together that led to us having more deep conversations about what we believe, why we believe it, and all those different kinds of things. And it was my first example and really experience of navigating situations like that. Oftentimes when we talk about sharing our faith, that can be something that's pretty nerve-wracking, pretty intimidating, like what if this person rejects me or what I believe? What if they stop being my friends? These are all things that I was thinking through. But this space, this situation around a McChicken and a McDouble smashed together gave us the room to talk about those things free of judgment, free of maybe fear or how the other person's going to react, and just talk openly about what we believe and why we believe. And I think this is something that happens to us more often than we realize, but we don't get to think of it the same way as like, oh, this is a gospel sharing conversation. And I mentioned this story because as we've gone through these last several weeks talking about the different ways that the Son of Man came to earth, what he came to accomplish, aka Jesus, we know he came to seek and save the lost. We know he came to serve and to be served. And our final, the Son of Man came to, is around eating and drinking. The idea for this series and what Fredo was kind of getting at a few weeks ago is if the first 2, the Son of Man statements are about what Jesus wanted to accomplish on the earth, we can think of this third one as how Jesus wanted to. And we find our third, the Son of Man came statement in Luke chapter 7, verses 33 through 35. I'm obviously driving right now, so I'm not going to be able to read it to you, but the loose paraphrase is, the Son of Man came eating and drinking. The context for this part of the story is that John the Baptist's disciples show up to Jesus. John the Baptist is in prison at this point, and they're like, hey, he wants to know, are you the Messiah or not? And it starts this longer conversation between Jesus and the religious elite, the religious powers, the in crowd of the day. And it leads to Jesus asking them who they think John the Baptist was, what he was here for. Because John the Baptist didn't drink, he wasn't like eating excessively, all these kinds of things. And they still said, the religious elite still said he had a demon. And then you have Jesus, who is here, he's eating with sinners, he's drinking with sinners, and the same religious elite are now saying, oh, he's a glutton, he's eating way too much, he loves food, oh, he's a drunk, he's doing all these things that are wrong. And so we find this interesting middle ground where John the Baptist is a very faithful and religious man, following the will of God, and he's still upsetting the religious elite. And then you have Jesus, who is still just as faithful, just as holy, following the will of God, but spending time with those he's trying to seek and save, and they're still calling him a sinner, a drunk, all of these things that are super bad for him. And I think there's something we can hold on to here. As we follow Jesus, as we try to become more like him, we start to look at how Jesus navigated his life, what he tried to do, and do our best to copy that. Obviously, we're not perfect people. We can't live the perfect life that Jesus had, but we can look at how he navigated these situations. Even in this context of talking to the religious elite, he doesn't bash them or defame them or bring down their character, but he says in exactly verse 35, he says, "But wisdom is shown to be right by the lives of those who follow it," meaning those who have wisdom follow the life of Jesus and how he lived caring for others. So now we've gone through these 3 weeks. We see okay, eating and drinking is how Jesus met with people, how he talked with them. I have this story of meeting with my friends at McDonald's and sharing the most cheap meal we could find. Literally only $2 and maybe 18 cents if you want to include tax. And some of those meals, some of those cheap meals, are some of the most impactful and honestly faith-shaping conversations I had when I was in high school, because I was learning to navigate what it meant for me, McKay, to follow Jesus. So maybe you're in a spot today where you're at your high school, you love Jesus, you're trying to figure out how to minister to them, but you don't know how or where to start. And I was prepping for this message, thinking back through those high school experiences. I remember the infamous time of lunch, the time where everyone gets to hang out, talk, see your friends that you don't have classes with, all those great things. Everyone loved the lunchtime break. And I don't know if it's different at your school, but at my school, every crew, every clique, every group of friends had their own table. It was socially and culturally known at my school that, that was the jocks table, that's where the theater kids hung out, the art kids were under that awning, and everyone had their space to connect and meet at. The table was a very sacred space in high school because there weren't so many of them. Everyone wanted to eat their food. No one really enjoys eating standing up all the time. We all wanted a break. And so there was this thought and idea of each crew had their table. Now, the very important big part of each crew having their table is that you knew you didn't take not to take someone else's table, is what I'm trying to say. I remember a day when my friend group, our table was taken by just a different friend group, and it didn't turn into anything, but the entire lunch period was just a conversation of why did they take our table? That was our table. It was a very special and close thing to us at the time. And so we have this this conversation about a table. And I'm thinking back to those memories, thinking back to the funniness of being upset that someone took our table. And it reminds, and now reflecting on that, I see the sacredness, if I want to be a little over spiritual here, I see the sacredness of the table, because oftentimes tables are where we have the most intimate conversations. If you come from a family that has dinner together at the table, that's a great thing. That's where most often the hard conversations take place. At a table is where Viv and I have to navigate what it means to be married and the ways we have potentially hurt each other and offer forgiveness and grace in that. At coffee tables, I went and grabbed coffee before this. At coffee tables all throughout my life, I've had different conversations of asking someone to be my girlfriend, and at the same table months later, breaking up with said girlfriend. I've had conversations at tables about what it means to follow God and what it doesn't mean to follow God. I've had conversations around the table that are just generally uplifting and praying for the people that are in my life and around me. And who knows, maybe you haven't thought of a table this way, you don't think of it that deep, you're like, okay, you're tripping. But at a certain point, we have to recognize that hard conversations, but also really great conversations happen in these spaces. I remember in my community group, one of my older community groups that I'm no longer in, I still love all of those people, but just different season of life took us to different places. And this group took a trip to New York. Now, this group knew the worst parts of me, and they knew the best parts of me. And we had planned this trip for a really long time, and we were actively looking forward to it. Everyone saved. It was around Christmas time, so it was like beautiful in New York. The Christmas lights were still up. It was cold. I was freezing in my California way of life. But we went to a spot called a pasta bar. It's this really unique, really cool pasta restaurant in New York City. And I remember the experience of walking over there. It was our first night. We sit down, we order our food. And I was reflecting on the years it took us to get to this point. I was reflecting on how when we first started the group, it was awkward and strange and uncomfortable to a certain extent because we're figuring out how to be in community, how to be in relationship with each other. And then I'm reflecting on, here we are several years later, now sharing one of our best meals. This pasta's handcrafted. They have like cooks and chefs strictly just to make handcrafted pasta, like they don't order it out. The sauce was magnificent. Every appetizer was just hitting. It was a beautiful, beautiful time as we shared spaghetti. Spaghetti and tomato sauce is, I think, what I had in this very intimate and honestly like worship-filled moment. Now, my group would not have been able to have that kind of meal and that kind of experience if we had not spent time at the table going through the hard moments too. Going through the mundane moments, just another week type of moments. And I mention that and I say all that because as we have this heart and desire to be discipled by Jesus and disciple other people, I know myself, I can get caught up in the like big life change moments, the moments where it's like, yes, they've made a decision or they are finally going to start coming to church with me, like those big moments that we like to hold on to. But the reality is, more often than not, we have to live in the mundane moments. We have to live in the day-to-day grind of, I'm learning how to follow God when I don't want to. I'm stressed out and tempted, and right now the temptations sound better than sharing this meal and having to talk about life. So as we wrap this series, as we look at all of the Son of Man came statements, we see that Jesus spent his time eating and drinking. We know the sacred feelings, moments, memories that we have around a shared table together. So the question I leave for you as you navigate your school campuses and your homes, who can you invite to your table? Like I said earlier, my table was at McDonald's over a $2 meal. I know the struggles of high school and not having money or maybe as much freedom, but who today can you bring into your table on your campus? Who is the friend that you have enough relational equity with that you'd be willing to bring into the table of your home? Who is the friend or peer or classmate that you want to bring into the table of your classroom as you guys are working on projects together? This idea of the table is less about specifically where you eat, but who are you bringing into the average everyday life? The meal and the drinks that you share with your friends can be fine dining at one of the best pasta restaurants, in my opinion, that I've ever ate at, or it can be over a $2 coffee at Condren or at Arcade or whatever coffee shop is local to you. Navigating faith and discipleship looks less like these big, magnificent, life-changing moments. Those do come and we hold on to those well. But as we look at the Son of Man, as we look at Christ, the Son of Man, we look at how he did these things. More than anything, he wanted relationships and connections with the people that he was interacting with. I love you guys. I'm praying for you. I know I've kind of said a lot today, but I'm praying for you guys. If you have any thoughts or questions or concerns about what we're talking about and how to navigate that, feel free to drop it in the comments. My name is McKay. I'm your online youth lead. Sandals Church Youth exists for students like you to find out what it means to be real with yourself, God, and others. I love you guys. I'm praying for you. I'll see you next time.